It's deck days at Lowe's, and the savings are stacked. Right now, pros get 15% off all in-stock composite decking from top brands like Trex, TimberTech, and Decorators. Plus, get a free DeWalt 20-volt max 5-amp-hour battery when you buy a select DeWalt tool. The deck's stacked in your favor with brands pros trust. Our best lineup is here at Lowe's. Valid through 4/22 while supplies last. Selection varies by location.
Kalimera. Good morning from Nicosia. It's Thursday the 23rd of April, and this is the Brussels Playbook Podcast. The vibe in Brussels today is one of watching and waiting, with the show happening some 3,000 kilometres away. But the vibe here in Cyprus is one of anticipation. EU leaders will arrive this afternoon, the biggest European gathering on this island for many, many years. I was here in 2012 when Cyprus last had the presidency of the EU, but even then there was nothing on this scale, nothing so pivotal, nothing that took place against the backdrop of global disruption, consequential wars on Europe's doorstep, and nothing that felt so era-defining as 24 or more presidents and prime ministers in the shadow of a crumbling world order and needing to prove their relevance. I'm Ian Wishart, as I said, in Nicosia. Sarah Wheaton, our policy editor, is in the studio in Brussels. And Nick Vineker, our chief foreign correspondent, is also with us. He's joining us from Greece, where he's attending the Delphi Economic Forum. And among other things, tracking the Donald Trump MAGA gang showing up on this side of the Atlantic. And with speakers there, including the Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis and the European Council President Antonio Costa before they come here to Cyprus, it's obvious that all our paths are converging today.
I mean, Ian, you've brought up all these weighty, important, world-defining matters, but I got to ask, have you been served halloumi yet?
I have not eaten halloumi, Sarah. I don't intend to eat halloumi, and I'm answering no more questions on the subject.
All right, I'm chastened.
There may be an arrest warrant pending.
I'm keeping a low profile, I can assure you. Not keeping a low profile, however, are all these leaders that are coming to Cyprus this afternoon. We've been talking about the summit for a few days, obviously, but just to mark your cards about what exactly to expect when. Leaders are having dinner tonight in this high-octane party seaside resort of Ayia Napa, loved by generations of teenagers and British students. But the leaders have important matters to discuss. The dinner will be about geopolitics, the Iran crisis, Donald Trump's actions, high energy prices, how to defend Europe. And then tomorrow, back here in Nicosia, they're talking about the EU's long-term budget and meeting leaders from other countries in the Mediterranean and the Gulf to discuss regional security. So, Sarah, these are pretty high stakes, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, look, the Iran war is in week 8. The Strait of Hormuz is still closed. Flights are getting canceled because there is not enough jet fuel. Energy prices are going up and recession fears are creeping in. So, every time the leaders seem to want to talk about the big picture stuff, the real world breaks in.
Yeah. Nick, you've been following this for a long time, but certainly even this week. You were in Luxembourg this week with the foreign ministers. Iran is a big focus. What is the mood around the table with the foreign ministers and then with the summit today? Do you get the impression things are moving, or do you feel like they are still completely split within the EU?
I think on Iran, we're condemned to the sidelines. They're condemned to the sidelines. And we're going to be talking about mitigating measures, how we can offset the ongoing energy crisis, how we can sort of insulate Europe, how we can build up our defenses here in Europe, including in Cyprus, and make our defenses more European. But weighing on the outcome of the Iran war, that's just one where Europe doesn't get much of a vote. And I think that's pretty widely accepted.
Yeah, I mean, they all have some nice words when they're talking, but there are actually substantial divisions, even on things like securing shipping routes. When you look at the divisions between France and Germany, Emmanuel Macron, the French president, says he wants to secure the Strait of Hormuz. The French are saying they don't need to include the US to do that, whereas the German Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, has said that Germany is fundamentally ready and want to discuss that with the US armed forces. So actually, on substance, there are divisions here, aren't there?
Exactly. I mean, you just got right to the heart of it. Does Europe want to be transatlantic? Do we want to maintain that bridge with Washington, cooperate on Strait of Hormuz, or are we plotting this other sort of more defiant European path, which Emmanuel Macron is trying to take, not just on Iran, in fact, but also tougher tone toward Israel? Those are kind of two diverging paths within the EU at the moment. And I think they're showing really where the split is.
Yeah, Sarah, our listeners and the people of Europe might actually be more interested in what they're going to do to get energy prices down, mightn't they?
Yeah, but it's not really clear that they're going to do much of anything. I mean, the commission rolled out some new measures, this fairly familiar playbook of state aid flexibility, looking at power grids, investment, but it's not really much that leaders can bring back to their citizens. And at the same time, the commission held back on doing something that could have actually changed the picture, which you and Ryan talked about the other day. They held back on this idea of actually saying, let's encourage, mandatory work from home days. Let's urge people not to travel. That would be a little bit too much Brussels. And so they held back there. And we'll see if the leaders are satisfied with what they brought to the table.
I was just going to say, it's really funny how you go from the minutiae of things that really affect people's lives, such as working from home more, to the huge geopolitical issues that are on the agenda of this European Council. There seems quite a stark discrepancy there between the two things. Nick, just tell us about this Article 42.7, the EU's mutual assistance clause.
Yeah, this is one really important point that's going to be on the table in Cyprus. This is the EU's mutual assistance clause, so not mutual defense, but it's what is basically obliges one EU member to come to the aid of another member if it comes under attack. And this has been lying there, kind of sleeping unnoticed in the treaties. But as things heat up, as Cyprus comes under drone attack, as the transatlantic relationship gets more and more strained, they're looking at how to operationalize this. So the chief EU diplomat, Kaja Kallas, is going to brief the leaders on Article 42.7. It kind of tells you what the mood is there about European defense and where we are in the story here.
We've got a story out on the POLITICO website today, actually, by our defense team, who made quite an interesting point about this clause, that actually, whereas some countries in the EU, like Greece and Cyprus, are very interested in it, the others, particularly those in Eastern Europe, they think, is this actually creating doubts about NATO's defense clause, Article 5? And actually, there's quite an interesting division there. If some countries are talking about wanting the EU to do this, does that further dilute the influence of NATO?
Absolutely. And that came up in some of the briefings. Some NATO-friendly countries, some more transatlantically oriented countries were saying, you're making too much of this. But again, going back to your point about the Macron-Merz division, this is once again transatlantic versus European sovereignty. That's the big story playing out.
And Sarah, we should say that somebody who's coming to the summit here in Cyprus is Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, but somebody else is notable by his absence.
We have Zelensky. We will not have Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán. He's sacrificing the opportunity to come to one last UCO. And that means that, a key veto player has left the room. Bathroom break is going to be permanent. And so people are expecting, to make easier deals. But I got to tell you, Ian, going forward, I'm really curious to see if things actually get that much easier, because I still think a lot of leaders were just conveniently hiding behind Orbán.
Yeah, I think that was pretty obvious that we've seen in your reporting and Nick reporting and our other reporters reporting even over the past year or two, really. It looks like today sort of final approval for the EU's 90 billion loan to Ukraine will go through. But that's, as you say, that's just one thing. And there are so many more obstacles to get over in all sorts of areas in the months to come. Nick, you're in Greece at this economic forum. What's it like there?
I think this is an interesting sort of forum. One, the theme is economics. We've just had Germany slash its growth predictions for the current period. This is kind of the black cloud hanging over this conference is, what do we do economically, especially on energy, to kind of get Europe going again? We haven't mentioned it, but there's some interesting measures about single market on the table in Cyprus. But the other aspect of it, which is kind of interesting, is that this gathering here is kind of an outpost for MAGA, for Trump acolytes. There are quite a few notable figures on stage here, and they're calling Greece, the government of Kyriakos Mitsotakis, their good buddy in the EU, and that's an interesting one to watch.
That's fascinating because Mitsotakis is certainly not one of the more Trumpy people. He's part of the European People's Party, the center-right party. So what is their pitch?
Well, the way they described it, this was the editor-in-chief of Breitbart, which is a kind of Trump-aligned publication in the U.S., was speaking to my colleague and, said what they like about Greece. They said, well, we like it's a religious country. It's traditional. You guys are focused on the basic things. They've been very welcoming to Kimberly Guilfoyle, who's, part of the extended Trump family and is the U.S. ambassador here. They feel welcomed and they've come out here. And it's interesting because we've been writing a lot about MAGA losing some of its allies here in Europe with Viktor Orbán. That was a key one. And I think they're reinvesting a little bit into this relationship. Got the U.S. ambassador here, other MAGA figures also taking the stage.
It makes sense. You lose one friend, you need some others in Europe.
Indeed. Yeah, right.
Nick, you're interviewing people over there, aren't you, in Greece?
Yeah, as I was saying, it's great to do interviews. Another thing is to write them up. So I've had interesting conversations and we'll have to get around to writing them. But I had a really, really great chats with the president of Estonia. He's talking about shortages in U.S. weapons. They're a big NATO kind of champion, and even they are having to wait in line for U.S. weapons and deal with that. I also sat down with the prime minister of Albania. He's Trump aligned, but he sort of resented the idea of having to choose between Trump and Brussels and said, it shouldn't be either or. And he also told European leaders, you've got to open a line to Putin. You've got to have a dialogue with Russia. That's a little bit of a controversial take. So more on that in coming days.
Yeah, and I know our colleague Elisa Grizzi is interviewing U.S. Ambassador to the EU, Andrew Puzder, on stage today. So I'll be really curious to hear what he has to say to her.
Yeah, he's an absolute character in Brussels and somebody that a lot of our listeners will know well. So it will be really interesting to hear from him. Sarah, no Brussels Playbook podcast tomorrow, but there is, as usual, for a Friday, EU Confidential. Do you want to tell us what's on it?
Yeah, we'll have Anne McElvoy will be helming tomorrow's episode, and she'll talk to Kurt Volker, a former U.S. ambassador who worked on negotiations with Ukraine during Trump's first term, but he's generally been critical since.
Lovely, and I'll try to give an update from here to tell people what's gone on, if we work that out by then.
No pressure on the producers.
No pressure at all, no pressure. But thanks very much, Nick. Thanks very much, Sarah. All enjoy your weekends when they come, and to you listening at home too. That's all from us today, from Cyprus, from Greece, from Brussels. Do subscribe if you can. Give us a nice rating. Tell us what you think about what's going on in Europe on our WhatsApp link, and we'll be back on Monday. Have a good day. Bye.